spotmedia.com. The woman accused of leaving her 4-year-old son at home in Rivoli, St. Catherine unsupervised on several occasions is now in police custody. The woman has been charged. The child is said to have Down syndrome. Residents claim that the woman left the child for days without food. They also claim that this has been going on for at least 3 years. And of course, we'll continue to monitor this story and provide you with more information in subsequent newscasts. The man who was arrested in connection with a voice note which was being circulated on social media in which a 12-year-old girl claimed she was being followed by a truck driver has been released. Investigators say the man was released following instructions from the Director of Public Prosecutions that there was insufficient evidence to lay charges against him. However, a senior investigator told the TVJ News that the cops are still investigating the suspect. The truck driver was arrested on May 5 after the voice note went viral. The girl claimed that the incident happened in Portmore, St. Catherine. The Jamaican Institute of Architects is raising concern about some of the ramps constructed at public facilities as part of yesterday's Labor Day activities. The ramps were built at schools, health centers and other public agencies to create access for members of the disabled community. President of the Institute, Christopher Liu, says several of the ramps were not built to international standard and could be dangerous to wheelchair users. However, Mr. Liu did not indicate which ramps were not constructed in line with international specifications.
A ramp that is too steep becomes a slide. The purpose of a ramp, 1 unit rise for 12 unit run. So if you have a riser and a tread, then you are going up 1 step. A step in a price approximately 7 inches then. You are going to need 7 units of rise times 12, 7 feet of run. You can see the problem. The reason why that slope is what is required is because it is assuming that a person in a wheelchair can go up the ramp on their own steam. Not everybody in Jamaica is going to have someone assisting them, pushing them in their wheelchair. And the more dangerous thing is coming down the ramp by themselves.
He added that some ramps at private sector buildings are also not built to international specifications. Education Minister Senator Ruel Reid is disputing claims by opposition Senator Wensworth Skeffrey that he failed to fulfill a promise to pay fees for tertiary students who were facing deregistration last year. This was the comment made by Senator Skeffrey on the weekend.
Couple of weeks ago, the UWI said they're not getting the money yet. I'm issuing a call tonight, calling out the Minister of Education to come clean by Monday morning, if latest Tuesday, and tell the reality. Have you paid that 100 million that you promised the poor people's children of Jamaica so they could have sat their exam last year?
However, Senator Reid says the money was paid last year, and he says the government also helped students this year.
The arrangement we made last year continued this year. We made good on the arrangement we had last year regarding the JAMBAT assistance, as well as those who we directed through SLD. We actually stood guarantor one of our students in that regard. So the ministry has been very proactive, and again, we intervened this year when intervention was required.
In April 2017, the government said it allocated $300 million to help financially challenged Jamaican students at the University of the West Indies Mona campus, the University of Technology and the Caribbean Maritime University. Concern is mounting about the state of affairs at Jamaica's oil refinery Petrojam. A union representing workers at Petrojam has joined the call for an urgent investigation into alleged widespread nepotism and corruption at the entity. The call was first made by opposition spokesman on science and technology Julian Robinson in Parliament on Tuesday. The Union of Clerical, Administrative and Supervisory Employees UCASE has revealed that it also received reports of staff victimization and nepotism described by Mr. Robinson. UCASE President Vincent Morrison says he supports the call for a probe by the Auditor General.
She will do a good job in finding some of the problems that I was told that is happening there. Employees have been demoted. Employees have been engaged who based on the information that I have, don't have the qualifications for the job. And when you talk about nepotism, Mr. Robinson has put it very mildly.
Mr. Morrison is warning there could be dire consequences for Jamaica if the situation is allowed to continue.
Jam is perhaps the most important company that we have in this country. And we want to say to the public of Jamaica that if it continues to run in the way it's been run, then we are going to have a long, dark night ahead of us.
Mr. Robinson has also claimed that there are major project overruns taking place at Petrojam. He also questioned millions he said were made in donations by the oil refinery last year. With unemployment on the decline, Prime Minister Andrew Holness is calling for a national effort to continue to improve these figures. Prime Minister Holness said the government has been proactive in implementing policies that ensure education and training institutions are equipped to produce a productive workforce. Here is TVJ's Shamela Mitchell with that report.
Earlier this year, the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin, reported that the country's unemployment rate has fallen below 11% in October 2017, returning to levels recorded nearly 10 years ago. A good sign for Prime Minister Andrew Holness and his Jamaica Labour Party-led government.
In fact, it has the two reports that have come has shown that unemployment continues to decline significantly. Now, unemployment is somewhere about 9.7%. More Jamaicans are now employed than any other time in our history.
Mr. Holness says what this means is that the government is working with the private sector in creating more jobs for persons, which brings in more income.
And one other piece of good news that comes as a result of employment is that poverty is on the decline. When more people have income, more men working, they can address the issues that cause them to be poor. So you see the key of labor. We get your labor into work and we get your labor into employment.
The Prime Minister says the policy of the government is for every Jamaican to be involved in some kind of work, which is why the government has created programs including the Jamaica National Service Corps, which targeted young people.
A part of the program is for them to give back. So we bring them into the army where they are learning critical life skills, critical employment skills. They are earning a stipend at the same time, but we require them to give back. And they are giving back through their labor.
Mr. Holness was speaking at a Labor Day project at the Cumberland Health Center in Portmore, St. Catherine on Wednesday. Shamela Mitchell, TVJ News.
A group of church volunteers from St. Catherine, Clarendon and Manchester are seeking assistance to complete a home building project in Bog Hole, Clarendon for an elderly man who had been abandoned at hospital. The senior Keith Stewart, who is blind, has been discharged from hospital after having one of his legs amputated. But with nowhere to go, the group pooled funds and started construction of a home for him. The project came to a peak on Labor Day but has stalled as there's a shortage of material.
And we are hoping to have it up as soon as possible. But we really need help. We are soliciting help from corporate Jamaican and also from private citizens that he can be here as soon as possible. We don't mind if this structure is completed within next month or 2 months, that he can be home. Because they really want him out of the hospital and they want to be home.
While they're seeking assistance for this project, they're also making an appeal to other groups like their own to take the time out to help elderly persons like Mr. Stewart who are in need.
Not even making the house, but assist. Like some people in the year, look at all that house top now. And there's nobody can say, all right then, so and so and so. You see, when rain fall, them wet, and there is nobody can say, why, go to so and say, let them buy a couple sheet of zinc and take off that zinc and put on zinc and assist the local old lady. Nobody just looking out for themselves.
Time now for news on the regional scene. Barbadians are today voting to elect a new 30-member government. Reports from across the island indicate that residents have been turning out in their numbers to cast their ballot. Now, even before the scheduled 6 a.m. opening of the polls, there were long lines at several polling stations in Barbados. However, the Barbados Labour Party, BLP candidate for Christchurch East, is complaining of chaotic scenes at polling stations in the area and lines moving so slowly that people are getting frustrated and leaving without casting a ballot.
The 542 polling stations scattered across the island opened at 6 a.m. local time and will close 12 hours later. The Electoral Commission said an estimated 255,654 voters are eligible to cast ballots in the election, and some voters turned up long before the polling stations opened. While the record shows 135 candidates and 7 political parties vying for control of the 30-member parliament, the contest is seen as a straight fight between the incumbent Democratic Labour Party, the DLP, of Prime Minister Frondell Stewart, and the main opposition Barbados Labour Party, the BLP, headed by Attorney Mia Motley. Political observers and media commentators believe that Mr. Stewart, who led the DLP into a 16-14 victory in the 2013 general election, faces a tough task in repeating the feat. If Motley becomes victorious, she will join the likes of the late Dame Eugenia Charles of Dominica, Janet Jagan of Guyana, Portia Simpson Miller in Jamaica, and Kamala Persad Bissessa in Trinidad and Tobago in heading a government in the CARICOM region. On Wednesday night, the two main political parties staged their final rallies in the capital, urging voters to go out early and cast their ballots.
Meanwhile, among the myriad of other Labor Day projects across the island, there were a few that sought to address some burning social and environmental issues. We take a look at a few of them in this report. From St. Thomas to Westmoreland, dozens of Labor Day projects, literally too many to mention. However, among them a few notable gestures of kindness. While hospitals in St. Thomas were also ramped up, in Yallas, a group of business operators along with the councillor for the Yallas division pooled resources to fix the house of 2 mentally challenged senior citizens. Their niece, Nadine Bryant, explained that the 2 sisters, ages 70 and 75, have been living in a dilapidated structure for a very long time.
Decades, as long as I can remember. I am really happy for what John Lee has been doing, the improvement on the house, and I'm grateful for the help and the upliftment of this house to fix it up for them so they can live a little more comfortable.
We understand that the structure had no doors or windows and leaked when it rained, but these issues were fixed with the help of hardware stores and other business places in the parish. In St. Elizabeth, a looming environmental disaster was addressed as garbage pileups had become a common sore eye in several communities. However, subsidiaries of Alpart have partnered with the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, seeking to avert possible health hazards by extending a project to install garbage skips in just under 50 of these communities.
Namely, Prospect, Duff House, Cheapside, Morningside, Kinole and New Building. Last year we did 12 such garbage skips and we are doing 7 today. That brings it to the total of 19. We have 45 communities and we want to install garbage skips in the 45 communities in and around Alpart's operating area.
Anti-litter signs were also installed in the parish as well as in Manchester and Clarendon. Regional Operations Manager of the NSWMA, Edward Muir, says it's an indication that they will be taking a tough stance on littering.
The anti-litter sign is important because we need persons to realize that we are serious and we are now on a campaign to clean our region.
In Manchester, a group of church volunteers have come together in an effort to help an elderly person who had been abandoned at hospital. The senior, Keith Stewart, who is blind, had been discharged from hospital after having one of his legs amputated. But with nowhere to go, the group pooled funds and started construction of a home for him. The project is not yet completed as they have run short on material. The opposition spokesman on science and technology, Julian Robinson, has raised concerns about sections of the data protection bill that is now before a joint select committee of both houses of parliament. The opposition spokesman was making his contribution to the sectoral debate on Tuesday. Some of his concerns surround the type of powers the proposed information commissioner should have. TVJ's Kirk Wright reports.
First off, Julian Robbins says the opposition supports the data protection bill, but pointed to what he describes as gaping holes that need to be fixed. Mr. Robinson touched on the functions of the Information Commissioner, which he says fall under two broad headings, general and specific. He also talked about the section which outlines that the Commissioner can encourage members of trade organizations to publish voluntary codes of practice for its members.
These are just two examples of the far-reaching responsibilities that the Commissioner has. We on this side of the House take the view that with such great responsibility and with the potential to impact on the lives of every Jamaican, the provisions as they exist in Section 4, Subsection 4 of the bill cannot stand. Subsection 4.4, which is equivalent to the wording of Section 5 of the Contractor General Act, and Section 94.6 of the Constitution, which deals with the office of the DPP, provides in effect that the Information Commissioner is not answerable to any other institution or person within the Jamaican state.
Mr. Robinson gave the opposition's perspective on what should otherwise be obtained.
How do we propose to achieve the balance between independence and accountability? One option, which is the traditional one, is to impose a mandatory duty on the Information Commissioner to file annual reports to Parliament, as is now required by the Public Defender, the Contractor General, and other commissions of Parliament.
Of concern as well is the provision in the bill that could force media workers to reveal their source of information.
So if I am, for example, the source of a story, I'm the data subject, I have the right to ask the data controller, in this case it would be the journalist, to reveal to me the source of their information or that story on me. Now what that does is it in effect would break the principles of privacy and confidentiality. And we already have defamation laws which provide protection for those persons who may be injured by a publication.
In essence, Mr. Robinson says the provisions set out in the bill would relieve the media of its power to protect its sources and place that power squarely in the hands of the Information Commissioner. Kirk Wright, TVJ News.
The 21-year-old man who was charged in connection with last month's deadly crash along the Mandela Highway has been offered bail. Adike Russell was offered bail when he appeared before the St. Andrew Parish Court on Friday to a charge of manslaughter. Marlene James, a resident of Portmore St. Catherine, was killed in the mishap. Mr. Russell is to return to court next month. Investigators say he was driving a car which was traveling along the busy thoroughfare on April 29 when he tried to overtake a garbage truck. He lost control of the car, which hit another vehicle. Both vehicles became airborne and fell onto other vehicles. The impact damaged 4 other vehicles, including a hearse. Miss James, who was thrown from one of the vehicles, died at the scene. And Councillor for the Yorktown Division in Clarendon, Ufel Purcell, has come out in defense of infirmary workers who were put on blast by local government Minister Desmond McKenzie recently. Mr. Purcell commented on the issue at a conference in the Tollgate Division Sunday night. We have more in this report.
Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie recently announced that he will be taking aim at unqualified persons working in infirmaries across the island who he says were employed because of political connections. He also promised to take stern action to deal with reports of abuse meted out to residents by the workers charged to care for them, and stated that some workers have even been administering medication to residents even though they were illiterate. But Councillor for the Yorktown Division, Ufel Purcell, has expressed disgust with the minister's comments.
When I listen to the Honourable Minister Desmond McKenzie talking about workers at the infirmary, I am shocked, I am disappointed, and I feel hurted. Because when he spoke about some of them get work because of labour right, some of them get work because of PNP, and they can't this, they can't that, I am shocked.
Mr. Purcell has blasted the minister, suggesting that if he is not pleased with the educational background of the workers, then he should make arrangements for the staff to get additional training.
If you found out that you have an institution that you are leading, and persons are not brought up to what you want them to do, get inside there, speak to them, speak to art, speak to whatever institution is there to assist them, and assist them. Don't belittle them like that. Don't allow them to be like they were not given what they have to offer to the elders of this country.
He was extremely critical of the minister's approach to the situation, insisting that sending home workers who have been serving in infirmaries across the island for years is not the correct way to address the problem.
They have a right to, and they have done exceptionally good work. I can contest to the fact that the Maypen Infirmary is one of the excellent out of all of the infirmary, well put together. And I, as former chairman, has done a lot of work to assist those persons who are working there